Hey guys, what's going on? It's Jay, and wow, do I have a treat for you guys. I have the Sony A7C II. Yep, it's finally out. I'm gonna do some sports testing with Jace. So what we're gonna do is he's gonna go up the road, come back down. So I'm guessing it's gonna be near 100% hit rate because this lens is really good. This is the G2 70-200 f4 lens. And the A7C II has the AI chip in there, so the autofocus should be absolutely ridiculous. All right, buddy. I was actually zooming while rapid firing as well, so we'll check the accuracy with that. All right, so now we're gonna do it in video. I'm actually going to record this in 4K 60 also, so this way I can slow the footage down. I'm going to hold it landscape style. 4K 60 gives you that 1.5 crop, so it's Super 35. So I'm actually zoomed in even more. All right, buddy. Try to get as steady as possible here. Well, it's definitely tracking him. I can see the box on his face. Man, that's incredible. Still tracking him. Wow. Yeah, the entire time. The tracking box is still on him. All right, I just lost it. He went behind a tree. That's very impressive. All right. I'm gonna have to sell the A7 IV because this is basically an A7 IV in the smaller, more compact camera body, which I prefer. Now, the A7 IV has dual card slots, so that is a more pro-oriented advantage for sure. This only has one UHS 2 card slot, but I just prefer the smaller, more compact camera, and I always have, and that's why I purchased the A7C. It has a better stabilization system. It's got a lot of upgrades, a lot of software. So the stabilization system has 7 stops now instead of 5 stops. So 7 stops is a pretty significant upgrade in my opinion, especially when hand holding. Now I'm using a gimbal right now, so it should look butter smooth, but I'll show you some, just me holding the camera walking in a minute. Has the AI chip in here for 60% improved autofocus performance as far as eye autofocus goes. So it has the 33 megapixel sensor. It's 7K oversampled for video if you're recording in 4K 24. They did a pretty good job with the thermals in this camera because you can get really good record times, even in 4K 60. So the autofocus, 759 autofocus points, and with the new AI chip built in here, it is significantly better. The A7C already had amazing autofocus, but of course, who doesn't want better, So it's even better than the A7 IV autofocus, which is just incredible, So I just came across this little lookout here, so might as well check it out. Oh yeah, pretty sweet view. All right, so another cool feature is auto framing, and you can see how the camera just zoomed in on me. That's auto framing, and it's really cool because it'll like follow you around if you move, you see? And game-changing feature. The new Sony cameras are all pretty much getting it, and I love the feature, especially for stuff like this. When I'm talking about stuff, it just makes sense to have the camera movement. It makes for a more interesting video as opposed to just being stuck on a tripod. Now, obviously, if you have a cameraman with you, that would solve the problem. You could just use a K, cameraman, follow me around. But when you don't have a cameraman, auto framing's where it's at. Watch this. I'll get up and I'll move around again so you can see. You see what I mean? So if I was like coming up these stairs, for example, I could like walk into the scene. It's gonna follow me, sit down on the chair over here, and that's pretty cool. So it's showing like a rectangle on the screen that is, letting me know what the crop is so I can visually see it. I'll show you that. I'll bring it up and I'll show you what it looks like. But the full frame is much larger than what it's cropped in at. You know what I mean? So that's pretty much how auto framing works. So guys, another really cool feature that the Sony A7C II has is focus bracketing. So this is killer for macro photography if you have to stack your images. So when you're taking macro photos, the depth of field is very, very shallow at those high magnifications, meaning that you could only get a certain, like if you're taking photos of bugs or something like that, only a certain part of the bug will be sharp. So what you have to do is you have to adjust the focus and take multiple shots and then stack those shots using software like Photoshop, for example. That's called focus stacking. So to have the ability to do that in camera, now it's not going to combine the images in camera, but it'll adjust the focus that little bit, and it'll take up to 299 shots. So you can have a really deep depth of field focus stack going on. So we also got an updated active stabilization system. So we got the 7-stop stabilization for the sensor rig, and then the active stabilization is for when you're recording video, and it's a digital stabilization. So because of the AI chip, that's also been improved, and it's supposed to specifically help with like walking, you know, and like that little bit of jarring you get when you're walking. It helps cancel that out. So this is active and the sensor stabilization, which is now 7 stops on this new camera, which is incredible. So we got 7 stops and the active combined here, so you guys can judge for yourself how good this looks. By the way, guys, I'm using the new Sony mic on the top of the camera, so let me know what you think of the audio. I think it sounds really good. I tested it out with the A6700. I was really impressed. In addition to that, I'm using the Nisi True Color Pro Nano variable ND filter on here to help keep my shutter speeds down, because I'm shooting at f1.8 for the background blur. So the ISO is at 100, the shutter speed's at 1/160th of a second, just to let you know. It should be a little bit slower than that, but I have the ND filter maxed out at 5 stops. So that's the setup. And I'm using the DJI RS3 Mini gimbal right now for when I'm walking around and stuff, just to let you know. So Sony actually came out with a new extension grip option, which I don't have, but it goes on the bottom of the camera and it adds like another 1/2 inch, which is pretty nice. You know, especially if your like pinky goes underneath because the grip's not quite long enough. So you can get that extension grip, which will help with that. I'm looking forward to trying it out because I would like it to be a little bit longer sometimes, you know? All right, so another huge upgrade on the A7C II is the USB-C charging port. Now, the USB-C port is a PD power, so that means you can power the camera via the port. As long as you have a PD power source, you still need the battery in the camera for that feature, but I really like that. Now, you can also do transfer your files, and in addition to that, you could use it as a 4K web camera. So if you just plug a USB-C cable into it and then plug that into your computer, the camera will pop up as a webcam, and it'll stream at 4K 30 frames per second. So it also has updated Wi-Fi for, you know, 5G, so it's going to be a little faster with the Wi-Fi. So another upgrade that the AI chip is supposed to help with is auto exposure. So it's supposed to help like 20% better auto exposure. Same thing with auto white balance. Now, I'm actually not using auto white balance. I have it locked on daylight. The auto white balance does work really good, but I notice even in the woods here, when you go from shade to sun, the white balance was shifting around a little bit. So I just decided to lock it as daylight. All right, guys, so if you watched my A6700 review, you might remember this scene for the dragonflies. So I'm going to try to take some more photos and videos of the dragonflies, and we'll see what happens. There's one. All right, so I'm using the center focus area, and I also have it on rapid fire mode or continuous shooting mode set to high. Little frog just showed up. Kind of cute. Some 4K footage. Incredible creatures. So I have the A7C II and the 70 to 200 millimeter f4 G2 OSS macro lens, and there's an old school bus over there in the woods that I'm going to try to take a photo of. Now I'm trying to be quiet, probably not supposed to be where I'm at, but anyway, I'm going to try to take some photos. All right, guys, so There's these things all around where I live. Right there, you can see it. It looks like, I don't know, it's some kind of bird or whatever, but they're like landmarks or something, but they're really cool. They get painted locally and stuff like that, so I like taking pictures of them. But anyways, so what I got now, of course, the A7C II, but I put the 85mm f1.8 lens on there because I want to get maximum background butter, maximum background separation. You can see behind me right now, everything's looking pretty sharp, and that's because I have the lens at f9, but I want that thing, I want the background to be obliterated. So I'm going to set this to f1.8. I'll show you in a sec. Hopefully some decent shots. I'm heading over to Big Kev's barbecue now, so stay tuned for that. All right, guys. It's kind of hot outside. I have the air conditioning on in my car. You're about to see me in like pure gluttony mode here, but I'm starving. Now I have facial recognition turned off, so this way as soon as I hold the subject up, it just immediately switches to it. So here's the potato salad. Let's see how the exposure handles it. Oh man, it is so good. It's got like dill in there. I'll hold some up. It's really bright, you know, so the exposure is kind of tough there. All right, guys, I just switched the metering mode to highlight priority. And the reason I did that is because I want to show you this potato salad again. And it was coming up like blown out before. So now it should be exposed correctly. So hang on one second here. Let me get a spoonful and hold that up now. So now the exposure should be mint on this. And that is the metering mode highlight tone priority. So it prioritizes the highlights to make sure that they don't blow out. Check out this rib. Absolutely incredible how good these are. So juicy. All right, guys, so the one other thing I did get was the loaded baked potato here. So much brisket. Got some potato with this bite. All right, guys, this is just a static handheld test here with the Sony A7C II and the 70-200 f4G2 lens at 70mm. Seems to be working pretty darn good. So this is optical stabilization combined with sensor stabilization, 7 stops, and I also have it in active mode. Hey guys, what's up? So it looks like it's gonna start thundering and pouring rain any second. Time is limited. Just gonna take a couple pictures here and see what I can get. Alright guys, so just a quick hands-on here. I just wanted to show you what it looked like with this in my hand so you can see the size of it. Let me zoom this out a little bit, like so my fingers are underneath it. Like I said, they make this extra grip that goes on the bottom and it makes it about this much thicker. So you could see it'll give like another grip for this finger and then your pinky will be on the bottom. As it is now, I actually just have the 2 fingers on the grip and these 2 fingers below. And then my thumb is resting right here on this little nook here for your thumb, which is quite nice. Now the button feedback, I do notice the buttons look a little bit larger. They feel a little bit better, very similar to the A7 IV. Got the menu button here. Now you got the viewfinder here. Now this little adjustment is for your vision. If you wear glasses like me, you're probably going to need to turn this to make sure it's nice and clear. Looking at it from the bottom, now the door does not automatically lock, unfortunately. And looking at it on the side, we have these little things here for your neck strap and stuff, and notice how they're tight. See these, they move around. This one, they don't move around. So what you're hearing there is the stabilization system, by the way. But anyways, looking at it from the side here, if we pop this open, and pop this open. All right, so up there on the top, you have your mic port And you got your USB-C, which we already talked about. Now you got a UHS 2 SD card slot here, only one slot. You got the headphone port, and you have the micro HDMI right here. Now, of course, we got the flippy screen on the back, which you guys have seen before. So that's with the glass out. Now, if you're putting the camera in your bag, I highly recommend putting it like this so nothing will scratch the screen by accident. And then, of course, on the bottom, you have the 1/4" thread. And, you know, here is the full frame sensor. Dun, dun, dun. Beautiful. Same sensor as the A7 IV. So I just wanted to show you what this looks like next to the A6700 because they're almost identical. Not really, I'm just joking. They're not even close to identical, but they're very similar in size, as you can see here. Looking at them from the back, I mean, they're very, very similar. The A6700 does have a slightly larger grip, a little bit different, but you know, similar. One thing that is definitely different is the A6700 has that like hood here that goes over the EVF. Now let me show you what it looks like next to the A7 IV, which I own, by the way. So I own the A7 IV, and you can see just how much bigger the A7 IV is. But the A7 IV has a way better grip. It's just a more rugged camera. And the A7 IV also has dual card slots here. So you got the dual UHS 2 card slots on the A7 IV. You only have the one, you know, on the A7C II. And then on this side, you have the mic port on top. You have the USB-C, and then you have another USB port there. And then up here, notice you have a full-size HDMI, which is awesome. And of course, the viewfinder is a lot better on the A7 IV. It's a lot larger. And it can handle the thermals based on my test for studio work. Now, I was a little worried about that because I know people had problems with the A7 IV overheating in studio environments. So I did really test this thoroughly, and it recorded for over an hour and 45 minutes in 4K 24 with PD power and HDMI plugged in. So that's a pretty hard test, and it was 74 degrees in my studio for that test. So I was using this thermometer here to test the temperature on the back of the camera. And it basically at an hour and a half, the back of the camera got to about 118 degrees. And I checked it at an hour and 45 minutes, it was at 119 degrees. So at the 2-hour mark, it was at 120 degrees. I did get the camera to overheat in 4K 60 after about, it was over 2 hours. The battery died, I had to change the battery, then the memory card filled up, I changed that, but I was quick about it. And the 4K 60 went for over 2 hours, and then it did finally overheat. And I checked the temperature on the back of the camera. It was about 130 degrees. So in 4K 24, over 2 hours, it was at 120 degrees. So, you know what I mean? It was like slow, very, very, very slowly going up. So I think you guys are going to be fine in a studio environment as long as it's like 74 degrees and lower. I mean, if it's like 80 degrees and higher, maybe even 76 degrees and higher, you might have a problem. But again, I was in the studio with no airflow, no air conditioning. So there was like nothing to help cool it at all. And that's the results I got. So I'm pretty confident that this is going to work for you in the studio environment. So if anybody wants my A7 IV, let me know in the comments below. It's a great camera. There's no problem with the A7 IV. I just prefer the smaller camera. And I also prefer the viewfinder on the side of the camera. So when you put your face up, you know what I mean? You're not smashing your nose into the screen. Overall, super happy with the performance. The autofocus is incredible. Stabilization seems to be a nice improvement. And the AI technology with the chip provides, again, better autofocus. The subject detection has been raised up a lot, especially with the insects, as you saw with the dragonflies and the bees. And I have insect subject detect on, and it's focusing on the dragonfly's head. And it's highlighting it on my screen as well. Alright guys, so I will be coming out with a beginner's guide for the A7C II, so stay tuned for that. I'll walk you through it from a beginner-oriented perspective. You know the deal, setting it up, putting the battery in, mounting a lens, I'll show you all that stuff. And then I'll show you how to use the camera, you know, like the basics. And then we'll go into the menu and I'll show you some of the key features in there that you need to know as well. So be sure to check that out. Now, I just made a really in-depth video on Sony autofocus with the A6700, and it's pretty much identical to the A7C A7C2. So check out that video for autofocus. I'll have that linked below. In addition, I made one for sports shooting. That's a shorter video, and it was using the A6700 as well, but it configured all the different settings for sports specifically, and it's exactly the same as the A7C2 in that regard. So you could just follow those tutorials if you want to set this up that way. All right, guys, that about wraps up this review. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to ask below in the comments area. Also, in the description area below, I will have all the links with all the relative gear that I was using, and I'll have the links to the relative videos that I was talking about, those tutorials and stuff. That'll all be in the description area. So if you guys could give me a thumbs up, I'd really appreciate it, and it would be super cool if you subscribe as well. All right, guys, have a great day, and I will catch up with you next time. Take care.